meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Dan Bale,
Present.
Brian Hurley,
Here.
Brianne Schneckenberger,
Here.
Justin Meadows,
Here.
Grant Adams.
Here.
I'd like to advise that all testimony is being recorded. All persons speaking will be asked to give their name for the record and to spell their last name so that the minutes are accurate. Please turn off all of your cell phones. The order of those speaking would be that of the petitioner to have the first 10 minutes in which to make his or her presentation, followed by 10 minutes for all remonstrators to speak, 5 minutes for any government officials who wish to address the issues, and then 5 minutes for rebuttal by the petitioner. Our attorney will give each side a 2-minute and 1-minute warning as time is expiring. We ask that all persons conduct themselves in a civil manner and reserve the right to request those who are disruptive to leave. Ryan, do we have any agenda considerations for tonight?
Just 2 quick notes. One, and we can do it when we get to it, that staff is requesting an amendment, a continuance for the amendment to the BZA rules and procedures. We have that ready. It was almost completed last May when we last met. But one of the items there is there's a reference in the rules and procedures to our personal meeting policy. We requested some edits to that document which we've not had a chance to make. So we'll actually continue that again until next month or whenever we meet again. And secondly, just as a matter of record, BZA 24008, accessory structure request has been withdrawn by the petitioner. So no action on that tonight. Other than that, no other items to note.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. If the board has had time to review the May minutes, I would entertain a motion.
A motion to approve the minutes.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Hold on a second.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't think Justin's here that way.
Is that it? I think that's the one that came late.
It's marked as members absent. Justin? So the vote needs to be, yeah, 4, that's right, isn't it? 4-0.
Unless he came in somewhere.
I came in, I think, right after the beginning. I think it was like, I was a little late, but.
All right, if it makes you happy, I'll make the motion.
That's a little cleaner. Thank you.
Okay. Grant has made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right. Looks like the next item is old business. Ryan has stated that he's looking for a continuance for the amendment to BZA rules and procedures. So I think we'll need, do we need a motion or just go ahead and continue? Go ahead. Awesome. We will continue that amendment to next month's meeting. New business, we will be skipping BZA 24008 since the petitioner has withdrawn the request. So the next item is BZA 24009.
So as usual, staff will give a real brief presentation on this, and the petitioner will make their presentation. So location, this is the barber shop, here on West Broadway. Familiar with the area. This is directly west of GT Services office building. It's a former location of Southbury Gardens. Railroad tracks to the north, Broadway directly to the south. This property is zoned neighborhood commercial, which is that rose color. And then to the south is, in the blue, is Old Town zoning district. Far north, above the rose is some R1, but it's actually not residential land use. So they're really, there's residential land uses in the area, but nothing is directly zoned residential and has a residential land use. So pretty commercial area. 2 requests tonight, 2 variance requests, excuse me. The petitioner can go into more detail, or we can reference the staff report. But the first one is to allow more than 1 ground sign on the property. The town zoning ordinance limits you to 1 ground sign per frontage. 1 frontage on this property, so by ordinance it would be 1 ground sign. And the second item, the second request is to allow more window sign coverage than the code allows. So the code allows window signs, what we call window signs. It limits them to 10% of the window area, and also some restrictions on how tall lettering can be. But the more important thing here is just the window coverage amount. So those, in summary, are the 2 requests. Staff has slightly edited our specific conditions of approval, which we can get into. As always, we will be using the statutory criteria provided by the state and findings of fact to approve or deny variances. Staff has drafted Findings to the positive for the variance number 1, and findings to deny for variance number 2. We're happy to go through those in more detail later. We do have some recommendations of suggesting conditions of approval for the first variance, as we are in support. Since we're not supporting variance number 2, we have no conditions of approval. So the process tonight, we'll do the introduction currently. Next up, the petitioner to make their presentation. Do we have any additional questions from the board? We'd open a public hearing. If anyone is here tonight to speak, any rebuttal to that, then follow that up with final staff comments and questions from the board. And we're eligible for action as always. Approve, deny, approve with conditions, or to continue are our options. So with that said, I will stop talking. Welcome petitioner up to the podium and make your presentation.
Over here?
Yep. Okay. And if you have a specific visual you would like on the screen, please just let me know.
Well, I've got some pictures on my cell phone, but I mean, I don't know how that would work.
We're doing the fish.
We're doing the fish. I can get you that.
Who's the fish?
Okay. So my name is Christopher Prohl. I'm the owner of the Bobber Shop, a fishing store here in town. And when I was looking at the paper, it looks like you guys are in favor of approving the fish, which I certainly appreciate. The only concern that I have, well, it's not really even a concern. I just wanted to explain the picture at the top with the mural on there. That is not actually a window. On the inside of the building, it's walled over. Because I have a fishing store, natural sunlight will deteriorate the plastic artificial lures. So because of that, I covered that window over, and it's actually got a pegboard wall on the opposite side of it. The gentleman that paints that, his name is Corey Helms, I believe is his name. He's a professional artist. He does all of the murals and things on all of the buildings downtown Greenfield. He does all of the Hardee's restaurants. He's a very good artist, and he changes that seasonally. We had a picture of Santa Claus holding a bass in the wintertime. Then Corey had this one up there, and that was there for just a little while. And then once we got done repainting the building, because it was a horrible orange color, after we got done painting it and taking the awnings down, there was a big gap. So I asked Corey if there was anything that he could do to make it look better, because now there's that huge gap from where the awning was. So he put a real pretty sunset scene behind it. The picture, like I said, it's basically just on a pane of glass. It's not an actual window there. And if you come into the store, you'll see that's walled over. It does not affect the vision on the outside. The other one with our logo on there, Corey scraped that off after we took the awnings off, and he moved it up higher. That way it would be up above the bushes. And he asked me if I wanted to put a mural on it too, and I told him no, because we had to be able to see out because of the zoning rules. So all he did is he scraped it off and put it back on there with a little bit brighter coloring and made it look a little prettier than it did to begin with. So that's my only concern with that window, is it's not actually something that you can see through. So I'm assuming that rule is for in case there was an emergency situation. I guess I really don't know, but that window has been covered up, and it's a wall there because I don't want it to deteriorate the plastic baits and things that I have in my store. It doesn't take long. It takes maybe 3 months of direct sunlight, and those baits are absolutely ruined. So that's why that window's covered up. When I had him paint that on there, I didn't think that it was going to be a problem, because a pretty professionally painted mural on the side of a fishing store looks a lot better than just a plain glass behind it. So, my concern isn't the window, honestly. My concern was the fish, because I think that fish has actually kind of become a landmark already. We've got probably, I'd say, between 3 to 10 people a day that'll actually stop and come and take pictures with it and things. And we're starting to see pictures where people are posting it on Facebook and stuff. So far the farthest one away was somebody who was from Missouri that put it on there. So it's just really cool. So I'm more concerned about the fish than the window, but I would like to be able to keep the window because I think that a painted window that's done by a professional artist would look a lot better than just a plain black piece of glass. So, you know, I appreciate the consideration to keeping the fish, but I'm hoping that that can stay too. If there's a problem with the other window, the one that is west of the fish with our logo on it, if you guys want that scraped off, I can do that tonight. But like I said, it's just a blank window. So that's all I have to say at this point, I suppose.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Do we have any initial questions from the board?
Do we have a photograph of the other window that you're talking about?
I think it's in the staff report, slightly.
I can't see it.
It's tough to see, but it's in one of the staff report photos.
If you zoom in on the last photo.
Okay, so it's this window right here. And then that was the one right after we got done painting. And all we did there is actually that's after he got it done. He redone it again with some brighter colors and made it look a little prettier there. But it looked kind of silly with just having the blank window and then that there, but this is the window I'm talking about that's it's not a transparent window. There's a wall on the other side of it.
But the other one is
This
transparent.
This one is transparent. We can see that. That's where our cash register is. So we can see the traffic and everything going down the road. And, you know, and I didn't want it to block the window for obviously a couple of reasons because we knew that there were restrictions on it. But with the foot traffic of people coming up to take pictures with it and things, we wanted to be able to see it, you know, and make sure that everything was going to be okay. And we've not had any issues at all with vandalism or anything. So it's been, you know, we've been really, you know, nice. Our landlord, Eric, since that picture has been taken, he's actually gone and he's had his guys do professional landscaping all around there. He put in the mulch right here, it won't come up until spring, there's a flower called I can't remember what they're called now, but it's a ground covering flower and they bloom blue. And then once they come up blue, then they stay blue pretty much all year. But it just takes a while for them to take. So once that comes up, it's going to look like the fish is coming out of the water. So I think it's going to look pretty cool. So, but he went through the trouble of doing all the landscaping. He put nice bushes and stuff up there. That straggly tree is now gone. These metal catfish, I can put those in my flower bed at home if you guys don't want them out there. That's not a big deal. But those were made by a 15-year-old kid in a shop class that was doing them for an art project. And he brought them to us as a gift. So I thought they looked pretty cool out there. But, you know, again, like I said, this right here was my biggest concern for the night. I got a lot of money wrapped up in that and brought it all the way back from Wisconsin. I didn't want to have to get rid of him. So.
Is the only entrance to your building on that eastern entrance?
No, ma'am. We've got an entrance that is on the north side of the building as
Okay.
well. And it's the way that our store is set up, as opposed to what our first store was. It makes it really nice because we got enough room now where my fishermen customers that come in with boats have plenty of room to park. Where when we was down at the place across from Tim's Donuts, there was no room at all. So this location has been really nice for us to be able to expand our business.
Do you have any other questions? If not, should we go to public hearing and then staff? Are there any members of the public who would like to speak during the public hearing? If not, I'll note that there's no members of the public and we will move on. Ryan, would you like to run through the staff report?
Sure, I think maybe I'll start with just maybe some overarching comments. So, you know, one, the windows, we view those as windows. They were once windows, whether they've been covered up or not. They appear to be windows from the outside. If they're not considered windows, they're them wall signs. So either way, by windows for the petitioner, then by code, would allow them at least something, 10% of coverage. If they're considered wall signs, you can have a wall sign, but they already have 2 ground signs, which is kind of the point of one of our, sorry, I saw that. That flag
It
is
is like
around your
on
neck.
me.
Yeah. So, the whole point is with all of our standards, and this is something that, we don't review these and think specific to this property. We have a sign code that's been adopted that applies throughout the town. We need to provide that consistent, or we need to administer that consistently. So, generally speaking, windows are used as an architectural feature on most buildings. And so we don't want to clutter those up with a bunch of signs. And while someone might find these art murals attractive, we have to look at them all the same, whether it's an art mural or whether it's a flashing sign, whether it says open, whether it says any number of things. They're all signs to us. We don't regulate the content or whether we think they're pretty or not. So we have to treat them all the same. So to us, those are windows, and they, by code, are limited to a 10% coverage unless approved otherwise via variance.
Can you clarify, is it 10% of all windows on the buildings or 10% of each individual
It says 10%
window?
of the window area. I do believe there's some open interpretation that you could take on that. It says 10% of the window area. It does say window as in singular, so I think there's an easier interpretation to make that each window can have 10% coverage on it, that window area. But there's probably some latitude there to take. So, again, staff has to apply things consistently. We have to use findings of facts. So staff is recommending denial of variance number 2 for the window signage. Because 1, these are the windows. 2, the ordinance allows some coverage, so that we allow anywhere else in town to have it. And if we go down the road, at least from a staff perspective of supporting more coverage, everyone's going to want more coverage. And staff would be in the position of having to support more coverage, and we would support this particular request. So staff would recommend denial of variance number 2. In regards to variance number 1, we believe the large fish is about 56 square feet. What we call sign area drawing, or a square or a rectangle around that. Could be a little bit off on that measurement, but we believe it's about 56 square feet. That is larger than the sign code would allow. In addition, there is a sign which is not in that picture, but is seen in this one. You can kind of see it right here. I'll zoom in a little more, but it's mounted to the pergola. That sign was on the previous store. It was mounted to the building in the previous version. We have considered this sign a ground sign for purposes of this discussion because it's not mounted to the primary structure, it's mounted to an accessory structure. No different than pole mounting it to the ground, therefore we consider it a ground sign. So when the fish showed up on site, we now have, and then the other 2 smaller metal fish, our belief is that there's more than 1 ground sign on this property. So that's when we contacted the petitioner, sat down, had a meeting, and discussed it, and explained to them that they needed variances and that they wanted to keep all of their signage. So that's why we're here tonight. I think you could, petitioner could move this sign and place it on the building and then call it a wall sign. So our proposal in this is simply to allow a total of 2 ground signs and, let me rephrase that. To allow a total of 2 signs, 1 being the fish, and then 1 being this sign, whether you call it a wall sign or a ground sign, with the allowance for 2 signs. Our code would allow a wall sign and a ground sign, so we think that's a good way for staff to be able to show support and compliance and be able to write a findings of fact to the affirmative, because at the end of the day, there's still only 2 signs on the property. Whether it's mounted to the pergola or not, doesn't really matter to us. Via the variance process, it does not. It was based on code, it would. But the point being, 2 signs. So staff would be in support of allowing the fish and allowing this sign to remain on site, as long as we agree to staff's recommendations, which were more than one ground sign and one wall sign on the property. That the existing ground sign mounted on the perimeter may be considered a wall sign for purposes of enforcement of these conditions. In such a scenario, no additional wall signs may be permitted. Additionally, all ground signs must meet the requirements of the town of McCordsville sign ordinance regulations, with the exception that the existing fiberglass fish is permitted as is, but any future sign that replaces it would meet all standards. So in other words, that fish today doesn't have a bird base. It doesn't have landscaping, oh, it does have landscaping coming around it, but it is not permanent shrub plantings around it. So it is larger than allowed. So we're proposing to allow it as is. Any future signs that would be removed someday by this petitioner or someone else, that it would have to come into compliance. Second, the two metal fish, the two smaller catfish remain on site, but be located no closer to the right of way than the back corners of the building. So the idea there is, I think, there's an argument to be made that they add some character to the property. We all like character, but we also, again, remember, we have a sign ordinance that we need to be consistent with. So our compromise was, well, let's push those back a little bit and make them more oriented towards those that are parking in the rear and coming into the building from that direction. If you've been on the north side of the building, it's fairly plain. There's the building, there's a large pergola structure on the north side of the building, and then it is pretty much all gravel lot. So pushing those fish to that location, you know, kind of caters to their customers and gives a little character to the backside of the building. We thought it made sense. And then lastly, number three, no other wall signs, ground signs, or other statues permitted on site. Again, just a clarification that, you know, we're already going above and beyond our sign regulations. We don't want to see more get added because all these were added without permits. So we want to kind of make sure we're very clear and we set expectations that this is it, unless they want to come request further variances from the board is going to do.
And to clarify, if anything was put inside the building that looked like you could see it from the window, it'd be considered a wall sign?
If it was placed inside the building and was visible from a window, I'd be probably considered a window sign.
Okay.
Ryan, if that wasn't a fish, if it was, say, you know, a beach scene or something, is that still a sign?
There's two arguments to that. I mean, our definition of a sign is anything that attracts attention.
Yeah, and
Big beach scene would attract attention. Now, I would rather not delve into that discussion tonight, because the point of this one is that this is a fish in front of a bake shop. It's pretty clear that it's a sign.
I guess my other question is more so about like the changing out. Like, does that become like a temporary signage? Is that different because they do change the imagery?
Oh, on the windows,
Mhm.
on the windows. So the window sign requirement in our ordinance is actually listed under the exemption category. And what that means is that it doesn't require a permit.
Okay.
So yeah, it's essentially temporary because you can always change it at will, change it every day if you wanted to.
Mhm.
As long as you're under the 10% requirement, we don't care how many times you change it, what it says, how opaque it is, doesn't matter to us. So yeah, probably by its nature, they're temporary, but you certainly could have someone that leaves the same window sign up for ever.
Yep.
As long as it's not above 10% and the lettering is not larger than 3 inches tall, it meets our requirements, and we're not even going to pay attention to it.
Does that make sense to you as the petitioner about this,
So-
just 10% too?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I mean, I get that, and the only thing that I don't necessarily agree with is saying that that's a sign because I have a fishing store. If it was painted a chicken on there, it would be okay. And they actually told me that when we went and met them the other day about it. They said, well, it's because it's a fishing store. I think that the fact that the scene has a fish on it, I don't think that that's right to put that in that category. Okay, now, the 10% thing, yes, I get that. I understand that. And like I said, I mean, when Corey come out and painted it, he asked me, do you want me to put your name of the store, phone number, anything on it? And we had already looked at the rules, and we saw that you couldn't put any type of logos, anything like that. It was strictly just a fishing scene, and if you look at it, that's all it is. It's just a fish jumping up and with a sunset behind it. The other one, yeah, it's got a logo on it. But the reason we done that is because the one that's mounted to the pergola, if you are going eastbound, you cannot see it until you're already past Kinsey's.
Yeah.
Once you pass Kinsey's, then it's visible. So that was our other option. We had a banner that was on it was on an awning when we were down at 6130 across from Tim's Donuts. And it was an awning that was made on aluminum frame for that building specifically. Well, when we moved, the company that did the awning for us didn't really see any point in throwing that away. So what they done is they made a nice aluminum frame. They cut the material off and they put it on that. Well, when the nursery was still there on the side of the metal building, they had a sign there that was the same thing. It was a canvas sign on an aluminum frame. So I thought, okay, well, they had that there, I can stick this up there too. That way at least we got something coming from the other direction that you
Yeah.
can see it. And they said, no, you can't do that. So, okay, so we took it and it's at my store in Greensboro now.
Okay.
So we was able to at least use it. So we've looked at the rules and, you know, the last thing I want to do is to get anybody upset about the sign. But also, when you're coming eastbound, you don't see it until you're already past it. And the thing that you catch that gets most attention is the fish, because we don't have a sign on that side of the building.
Yeah.
And you can't see it until you're already past it. Now, if you're coming westbound, yeah, you can see it almost from where our old store was. So, you know, and that's why I was a little confused on where we could put the sign, because when we was originally looking to put it out there, they said, well, you don't want it too close to the right-of-way of traffic and everything else, you know, and we were told that, you know, if the snow plows come through, I mean, with that being a flat sign mounted on a little narrow area on the side of the building, we didn't want it tearing the corner of the building off, and didn't want it tearing siding off and everything else. So that pergola was really the only structure that was solid enough to hold that sign that weighs 150 pounds without hanging it on aluminum siding on the side of our building. And when we called, they said, yeah, that would be fine. You know, I knew we couldn't put it out by the mailbox, obviously, because traffic and everything else. And so that was my only thing, but I don't think it's, you know, I don't understand that the fact that just because it's a fish on the picture and I have a fishing store, I don't think that that's necessarily right. And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but if you go by the antique store down there, there's a huge Coca-Cola sign in there for sale. They've got car tires that's painted pastel colors stacked up on the side of the building. There's ladders leaning up against the side. That's a safety hazard if nothing else, but they get that leeway because it's an antique store. So that's where, you know, I'm not really seeing the equality in this, and this is what's going on. And that's, you know, like I said, when he painted that window, I specifically told him not to put any names or anything on that window, because that was strictly just to cover up a plain glass pane is all that's going to be there. Without having something on there, it's going to look pretty stupid, honestly. I think it's going to look really bland.
Do you plan to update that window, like, or is this the image that will stay on it? Like, do you plan on changing it out every, like you said?
We change it seasonally.
Seasonally?
We change it
Okay.
seasonally. At Christmas time, we had a picture, it was Santa Claus holding a fish.
Okay.
And we had a lot of people thought that was really
Sure.
cool. And then we changed it St. Patrick's Day, you had like a leprechaun costume on.
Okay.
And, you know, but yeah, we changed that out. And, you know, from the last time we painted it to now, we haven't really had any holidays. But each time I have that window painted, I mean, it's done by a professional artist. It's $400 each time I have that painted. And I just, you know, without it being painted, to see that building without anything on that window, it looks very dull.
So
And-
sorry to interrupt, sorry. I was just gonna clarify, the painted window that has their logo, that's in compliance or no? It's not in compliance because of the sizing of it. It would need to be 10% of the area. So I think what the town is getting at too is also you would be in compliance as long as it was the 10% rule.
Right.
So I think that's the more difficult part is they are allowing certain things, you just have to shrink it down.
Right. Again, we have to think about everything in the full viewpoint. We cannot treat anyone differently than anyone else. A sign is defined as any name, identification, description, device, display, or illustration that is affixed to or painted or represented directly on or indirectly upon a building, structure, or piece of land which directs attention to an object, product, place, activity, person, institution, organization, or business. Pretty much anything that attracts attention is a sign. And look, all communities struggle with this everywhere. Signage is incredibly difficult to administer and regulate. Because there's always something new coming out. There's always some new angle produced. But we look at it from I'll give you an example of a former community. A hotel painted a very large mural on the side of a building, and it was a picture of a meadow. And the name of the hotel had nothing to do with a meadow, zero. They considered it art. As our staff reviewed that at the time, the discussion we had to have internally and then ultimately with the Board of Zoning Appeals was, okay, what if that mural showed a pair of trees and the hotel was a double tree in? Then it's a sign, no doubt. So the whole public art versus art, or excuse me, whole public art versus sign is a really delicate balance. It's really difficult. It's just tough. But when you start to try to divide those two things as to what's art and what's signage, it's really hard. And I would prefer to go the conservative route and call it all signage. You can always request a variance if the picture is done. The BZA can approve that, but staff's going to continue to make the interpretation as we have until someone directs us not to.
So if he puts a painting on that window that doesn't have a fish, he's okay.
No, I think I just said that's not okay.
So he can't have
It's all about the
he
sizing.
can't have Santa Claus either. Okay.
What percentage of that window's painted with that, right there like that?
Right there is closer to 50, but I can tell you by today it was 100% covered. The one window. The other window, the west window is 30% maybe.
Okay, but I don't want to say this here. With that, it's not an actual window, though. That's what I'm saying. I mean, all it is just a glass pane there. And
What's the window?
it was, but what's the reason for the 10%?
That is, the town felt like, when this ordinance was adopted in 2011, when the town first started planning and zoning regulations in the town, it was adopted because they simply did not want, they actually require windows on buildings. It's considered fenestration, which is considered an architectural feature. It adds character to buildings, and a lot of times, especially if you're using, what's the term that they use? Not spandrel glass. Storefront glass, which is what you see in a lot of your retail buildings, right? It's almost floor-to-ceiling glass in the front. That's very expensive. It sometimes can cost more than the brick costs, but that tends to be very desired. And our municipality is not the only one. In fact, the vast majority require those types of finishes on retail buildings. They didn't want to require all that. Have these beautiful windows. Have developers spend millions of dollars to develop them, and then have them cluttered with a ton of signage. That was the goal behind it. We understand you need a little bit, you need some. At some point, someone picked 10% coverage. I cannot tell you who picked it or how they picked that, how they came to that number. It has been in our ordinances since before I was here. So, don't know how it came to 10%, but that was the number they picked, and that's the number that we have kept on the books for the last 14, 13 years.
Any other questions, comments?
I've got something else. The auto repair shop, which is just right down the street from us, they have a window that's 100% completely covered too. And it's got their name, their logo, their phone number, and everything right there on it. And they've got, I believe it's the perforated film that's got the real tiny holes where you can probably see out from the inside. If that's okay, would it be okay if I have that done in vinyl with the perforated holes?
No, it's not. We'll go take action against that.
Well, I wasn't trying to get throw anybody else under the bus, but
That's
you know,
what
it's
happens.
like the antique store. Okay, they got a giant Coca-Cola sign in there, and they got all kinds of antiques and stuff in there. They got their stuff laying out on the front porch. Whenever there's a strong wind, a lot of it gets blown right out into the road. And you know, I mean, it's not like I've got some 4-year-old kid going out there doodling on the glass. I mean, I've got a professional artist painting that on there. You know, and you know, and like I said, I spend $400 each time he comes out to do it.
You said he's out of Greenfield?
Yes, sir. And he does fantastic work. I mean, he does all of the Hardee's restaurants, and like I said, he does all the buildings downtown Greenfield. He's a super great artist. He's actually getting ready to do a mural on the side of my building out in Greensboro too. And, you know, I wanted it to look nice, you know, but
Just remind us, you know, we're not litigating other property in the town. Staff will certainly take a look at other locations, and if we feel there's violations, we'll begin that action. But we're here tonight to talk about this particular petition.
One more question, Ryan. If he removed the window and puts matching siding in so it looked like there was never a window there, can he paint a fish on it?
Nope, because it's a wall sign.
Wall sign.
Oh, it's a wall sign. Okay.
So he's allowed 10% per window, correct?
That's the way staff interprets the language.
Is there any getting rid of the others and giving it all to one window?
I think you guys can certainly do that via a variance, or via conditions of a variance approval.
I'm just trying to find some common ground.
So the picture that we have of the fish, that's, you said it's around 30% coverage-ish?
Probably, yeah.
The fish?
No, the western one, that's
The-
Oh, the bob of the logo.
The logo.
The fish right now, the fish window is 100% covered.
100% covered? Because that doesn't look 100% covered.
Well, I think
Regardless of what the decision is tonight, I would recommend if you're ever going to use that artist again, like clarify that with him too. If he is going to go do any painting on your window, it's the 10% rule as is, so you don't have to run into this situation again. But I think we do need to make a decision on whether we're going to have a variance, and if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, and just reminders that, you know, so staff has prepared findings of fact.
Mhm.
Variance number 1 is findings of fact to approve with conditions of approval. Variance number 2 is to deny. So if you go the same route as staff, then we can take action tonight and adopt findings of fact. If you would like to do something opposite of our recommendations, that is certainly fine. We'll need to bring those findings of fact back next month to adopt. And so that means we need to have stated reasons for those findings of fact.
Do they have any opinions on the matter?
my opinion is if it goes to 10%, it's, might as well be blank because you're not going to see it.
Again, my opinion is I understand the town's view, but I tend to agree with the petitioner. It looks better and looks more with the way it is. It's more appealing.
I feel like if there's going to be a variance here, the variance should probably be worded about total window area and maybe not just individual windows. And then maybe that also leads to the petitioner's artist being a little more creative with how to balance that variance percentage. Because I do agree, I love the big metal fish sign. I like that as a staple. I think it brings interest to our town too. And it would be a little plain without anything, but I also understand like we don't want to over signage a major frontage for our old town area. So
Well, one of the other things that I thought was really cool, about 2 months ago, we were getting ready to leave, and we saw a car pull up and had about 3 or 4 people that got out of it. And they come over to take a picture with the fish. And I just, we conversation with them, and they told me that there's a website that is, it's a scavenger hunt that someone has put online for different areas all over the country. And my fish, even though it's only been out there a short time, has already made the scavenger hunt list for people to find in this area. And people, that's what they do is they find these things and they take a picture with their smartphone, and then they upload it, and then when they find everything, then they win the prize. So it's pretty cool. It's already become a landmark, you know. And as far as the window with our logo on it, I mean, I don't have a problem scraping it down. I mean, that's fine. I mean, if that's what makes everybody happy, then we can just make it an empty window. But the other one, like I said, without anything there, it's not even, you can't even see inside the store because it's got a wall over it. It's walled over. And, you know, to put 10% of a mural on a window that big, you're not gonna be able to see.
I have
Now-
one small suggestion,
Yes, ma'am.
and you don't have to take my advice. I'm looking at your logo. So your logo has the bobber on the left and then the bobber shop to the right. It might work.
So leave the blue off of it.
That's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
A bobber on the left window, the bobber shop on the right window. You could even almost have it look like the bobber hook is going into that fish's mouth. I think that's going to be a lot less imagery on the window, but you'll still have like your branding, and you could still probably, maybe I'm wrong, Ryan, you could maybe still fit the phone number too, just maybe smaller.
I don't know.
I'm just saying this.
I mean, we've got
Again-
enough- we've got enough Facebook following now. I mean, I don't even have to put a phone number on it.
Okay.
But to our understanding of the verbiage of the way that their sign
Mhm.
rules work, you couldn't have phone numbers or logos or anything like that because it was considered a sign.
Yeah.
Without that, it would be worthless. So that's why we did it like this. That picture there is before he put the sunset in the back. But you can see that black, heavy, black insulated blanket is what's behind there. So without anything on there, there's just gonna be a huge black square on the side of the building.
Yep.
And we changed that out seasonally, and, you know, and, I mean, if it gets to the, regardless whether there's paint on there at all, it's still gonna be 100% covered with that black blanket behind there. So, that's where, you know, I think the building looks better with some type of a picture there than just a black square on the side of the building with nothing on it.
Yep.
So, you know, like I said, I mean, we've spent good money, you know, to make sure that it looks nice and to look respectful and, you know, just something to make it stand out. And it's a fishing store.
Yep.
You know, I mean, it's not a flower shop anymore, but to put something other than a fishing scene there would be kind of silly, I think. But when he paints that, he doesn't necessarily have to paint the sunset in the back. He could just leave that alone. It's still gonna be 100% covered anyway, but now I've only got half of the windows painted as opposed to the whole thing. But with the sunrise or the sunset in the background, we just thought that it looked really nice, so. But
Do you have a picture of that with the sunset on it?
I believe,
Through email? No, when you asked me to send out that stuff, I sent you the newer one.
No, I didn't even notice the difference in time, I don't think.
I'm sure I do, give me 1 second here.
Brianna, could you explain your idea again? What was your solution?
Yeah, so my solution was just the bobber and then maybe like a little string of a hook looking like it's going into the fish's mouth or something like, I don't know fishing, so don't judge me, please. But small enough that it meets the 10% requirement. And then on the other window, having the words, the bobber shop, you could still have a little bit of a blue background, but I think just having those white words standing out against the background looks better than nothing. So you still got your branding and you're still having a little bit of imagery on both windows to balance it, but you're meeting the 10% requirement.
Both windows would meet the
I've got that
10%.
picture here if you want to see it.
Yeah, please.
This fly is gonna kill me.
So,
Probably 50%.
all he did was he just made a real pretty sunset scene behind there.
Okay.
As a whole.
And, you know, like I said, you can't see anything through that window anyway.
Right.
Mhm.
It's better than a black.
See there?
Yep.
And, you know,
I also agree with staff that you can't allow some business to do one thing and another business to do another. We have the rules and we have to follow the rules, but if you have a solution that the 10% would meet each window, we need to look at that, I think.
Yeah, I would be curious the size of the windows. Do you know? Does anybody know that?
Is it about 5 by 4, is that right? 5 feet by
Yes.
4 feet?
So
About
what would
20 square feet.
10% of that be 2 square feet?
That's 20.
It's tiny.
I don't know how to do area on a circle. Pi
5
times
by
r
4 is
squared.
20 square feet.
There's a way to do it, we don't have to.
Yeah, I know.
20 square feet.
So essentially that would lead to a foot by a foot on verbiage or like,
For 1 foot.
yeah. 10%'s hard. These are small windows. Well,
Can't-
sir, go ahead.
Can we figure this out and readdress this next month?
That's what I was going to say procedurally.
I hate to,
We do have the option to always continue, or is that?
Yeah. Wasn't too. Until a vote or a motion's been made, you can continue.
Yeah, so I'll entertain any motions, but just know your options are approve, deny, approve with conditions, and continue.
Can we approve the fish and then continue the second variance?
You definitely can.
Okay.
You actually need to do the 2 variances
Separately
Separate.
anyway. Okay.
Yeah, do that.
with that then, I will make a motion if variance 1 is approved, that it meets all of staff conditions.
We have a motion. Do we have a
A
second?
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The variance number 1 has passed.
thank you.
I'll make a motion to continue variance number 2 until next month.
I have a motion to continue variance number 2. Do I have a second?
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we'll continue. And
Do you have direction, do you want to tap staff with petitioner, or do you just want to think about it and come back with your own ideas? How do you want us to proceed until the next vote or so?
knowing what we know about the 10%, would your artist be willing to like come up with an idea for 10% in each window for you? I don't know if that's going to cost you extra money.
I've got, my artist is really good. I
Okay.
mean, but that's a lot of canvas to leave blank.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the rules we gotta abide by.
Yeah, because it's either that or we have a variance, which that would be us making that decision on what that variance is.
So, I mean,
What
it's
is,
just gonna be a big black square on the side
I
of the
would
building.
lean towards the variance. I think it looks way better the way it is.
But the way that he says, like,
I get the
I
town's
can't even
rules,
put on there, like,
I do too.
if I've got sale items or something, because if I put any type of writing on there, then that becomes a sign again. So,
I think it's a sign regardless.
anyway.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
sign, this
so
sign, yeah.
You might as well put
And
what
it's a
you
sign on
want.
a window, no matter what's behind the window, it's a window.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing. I get that. I don't disagree that in this case, the fish drawing looks better than a blank window.
Mhm.
That should not be the question that we're asking
Right.
ourselves, right?
Mhm.
It's a window. We're supposed to treat all commercial businesses similarly. And so we have to think about that as you're making decisions because, yeah, sure, these windows lend themselves to maybe more coverage than other windows do, but how do you describe that when the next guy comes in and wants to do it and we don't feel like it looks better? I feel like the next one looks worse.
Yep.
So if we're gonna make a variance approval or consider that, think about how you would draft findings of fact that would be specific to why this case is different than the rest of the town.
Okay. All right.
But in that case, then what makes my business any different than the other ones that have windows completely blocked out? The antique store full of stuff.
Again, we will take a look at those, if there's some odds that if they are in violation, we'll start the process.
Well, like I said, I certainly wasn't trying to throw everybody else under the bus.
Well, you did.
But, well, I felt
Well-
like I'm getting thrown under the bus in a lot of ways too.
If you gotta play by the rules, they gotta play by the rules.
I
That's
understand.
what it is.
You know, and there's an organization out there, it's called the American Bake Association. And what that is, it's a big organization of all of the bake shops all over the country. And they tell us about new things that have come up and things like that, that are new products and stuff. And my store got voted one of the top 5 new bake shops in the United States. That's a big deal. And a lot of it is based off of appearance and the way it looks on the inside. Now, I worked extremely hard to make that building the way it is. We put a lot of money in painting it and getting rid of the ugly orange and trying to make it look as nice as possible. And painting that mural on there, I didn't do that to give the city a big middle finger. I did that because I thought it looked nice.
Yep.
And, you know, and I would hate to have to get rid of it over something like that. But I understand, you know, the rules are the rules, but, you know, I mean, it's gonna have a big black square on the side of the building. So, that's why I'm hoping that you guys can help me with that and understand, you know, that painting a pretty scene on there certainly looks a whole lot better. You know, even if it's a seasonal thing, you know, we change it out, you know, during holidays and things like that. So, you know, we could change it around on the next time we paint it, maybe not have so much coverage on there. But, you know, either way, I mean, 10% of a window that small is not gonna be much of a mural anyway.
Well, we are continuing it until next meeting, so we will come back next meeting with the same options. It's going to be approve the conditions, deny, or continue again. But it sounds like we'll work with staff to come if we are going to approve it with some findings. So we'll work on that.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan, do we have any announcements?
Yeah.
With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All opposed?
Aye.
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 We're adjourned.
One unofficial announcement.